This is going to be a tour of the property. Going to start with first coming out the back door, which is what we use. We're now looking more or less southwest, and the road is right there behind the RV, and we've got really two spots for RVs, although we need a hookup, but we could actually put two RVs here if we wanted. And you can see the gravel base that we laid for the RV. This is better than concrete, and a heck of a lot cheaper, because apparently the mice and the other field critters do not like climbing over the sharp rocks. So let's move to the front of the property. And before we get there, these are cedar trees. These and several of the live oak family trees are what dominate the hill country and give it its character terrain-wise. So let's go up here. This is an area where the deer frequent every single day. As you can see, there's plenty of rocks on top of this hill. This thing is just basically one granite hill. Let me zoom down a little. So you can see it's mostly cedar in here. There's rocks. Here's our fence line. And we can actually walk down the fence line here and take a look. We'll look back here from the view of the house from where we're at. So basically we're on the northwest corner of the property, and we're walking south. And you can see there's the odd cactus here and there. It's kind of funny where they grow. You just never know. Come down here to is what is basically the first terrace that was built. You can see this gets thick in there, and it's ideal for deer. They can go underneath these tree branches no problem. But for humans, you need long pants and a long sleeve shirt because you'll get scraped up. This is obviously a deer trail, it looks like. Another one over here. The open area there, a little to the right, that big tree trunk to the right, will usually have a doe bed down there in the afternoon for about an hour or so. I think she comes in, she drinks. We got a little water tank. She gets her drink and then goes over here and chills and then moves on, I guess, on her circuit. So let's try to walk down this without tripping on the rocks. Filming today with cloud cover, which greatly reduces the contrast. So here's I'll pan up a live oak. Just a huge tree that provides shade. No telling how the top of it's gone, but the tree is still living. You can see how it's branched off to really both sides. But this is a classic situation here in the hill country to find trees like this. Part of it's dead, and if you look at the branches, you can see there's like a wilt. I think they actually call it oak wilt on the tree. So here's a classic example. This entire hill is nothing but granite rock. There's just a thin layer of topsoil on it for habitat to grow, but it's basically all granite, as you can see right here. And this is the outer field, and typically we have a mama doe with 2 fawns that bed down on the property probably every night, and this is where they spend most of their time, in the field. So we can come over here to that, right near the fence line, and you can see again it's kind of just a different surreal look in this cedar tree forest with the rocks. Well, let's turn around now and you can see, we'll do a pan of our property here. You can just make out the house in the trees in the left corner area. This is a fantastic field for the deer. They love it. There's plenty of food here. There's privacy. There's no pressure. And I'm not going to pan down, but you can see deer tracks in the dirt. We'll walk our way down towards the you can see lichen on the rocks, white, yellow lichen, brownish lichen, all different kinds of lichen. There's plenty of lichen in this part of the country, mostly on the rock and the trees. And I've actually not been over here before, so this is the first time for me to follow the fence line and see where it actually goes. We've got a map, of course, on the plat, but you never really know where the real line is. And as you can see over here, let me pan over. There's a little ravine right there. So great place for deer to bed down and hide out. It's probably relatively cooler in here during the hot afternoons. Typically what we'll get cloudy skies like this in the morning up until around noonish time, give or take, and then you will get clearing. So most of the cactus here is mature, but there is always, of course, young cactus. This is what it looks like. And it's fairly big. That smaller piece farther down, well, let me pan up just out of sight. There it is, that one there at the top. You got to keep your eyes open in this terrain, because obviously walking on the rocks is kind of hazardous to your ankles and your balance. And usually you start out on a rock and you end up on cactus, so you got to really look out for it. So obviously our next door neighbor on the road is the property to the right. The property in front of us, or behind our property, is actually a camp, a summer camp for disadvantaged youth, called the Hill Country Youth Camp. So here you can actually start to see, as the camera is level, you can see the grade. We're starting to work our way down the hill now. And outside of a little breeze, some birds, and ever so quietly, cars several miles off in the distance. It is just quiet, just peaceful and quiet. We may or may not see deer at this time of day. It's just a matter of whether or not we invade wherever they're bedding down. Of course, me talking isn't helping, but you never know. There are no shortage of deer around here. If you live in the area and you drive at night, you're guaranteed of hitting deer once every couple of years. So obviously you don't want to drive at night unless you absolutely have to. Okay, let's pan over. Here's another shot of this ravine. You can definitely see that it's working its way up the hill there. We'll come back. But it's just definitely quiet, and I'm sure the deer are listening, so they're probably getting up and moving off before we get to them. We've already lost count of how many deer are on the property or have come through, and we haven't been here a week yet. It's just, they're so prolific. They're almost like squirrels in most parts of the country. There are that many of them. All right, so this is the wash. Obviously dry now, but in a spring rain, you would probably find some water coming down here. Okay, so again, the camera's level. I'm going to tilt up, and you can see how we're looking up the hill here. So there's just no shortage of peace and quiet, places for deer to bed down. They like to bed down in nice shady spots so that they can try to get some respite from the sun, but keep clearing. There's deer scat all over the place here. Of course, there's no shortage of rock here. It grows in these 2 or 3 inch thick plates like this, and then you'll see, I don't know, minerals or whatever going through them, geodes, something. But it's just the nature of the beast. And you'll see these plates, and they'll be stacked 3 or 4 levels high, and then there's a layer of dirt, or caliche they call it around here, and then another 5 or 10 feet up, there's another 4 or 5 foot layer of rocks that are, 2 or 3, 4 inches thick, stacked on top of each other. So it just makes you wonder how this area was formed geologically. Okay, let's make our way along the south fence here. We're going to be basically rimming the hill, maybe climbing a little bit, depending on the elevation on the other side. But we're wrapping around this hill along the fence line. And look at that, that, my friends, is a former deer. So obviously a coyote or something recently had dinner. We're continuing over towards the eastern end of the property. We are approximately 2.5 miles from town, but it feels like 50 because it's so quiet here. And we are 2 miles, almost exactly 2 miles as the crow flies, west of Interstate 10, but you can't see or hear it from here. And getting to our property from I-10 is about a 10-mile detour. Well, let's not go all the way down there. That's pretty doggone thick. Well, I guess. Nah, I'm not really dressed for it. So basically, this is the south side of the hill, and it goes down the east side of the hill from here. The terrain changes. I wonder if I can cut over that way. It's not but another 100 feet, 150 feet down is the end of our property, and it ends in a ravine on that side, the deep ravine that usually has water in it most of the year. So yeah, the thickets are down there. I don't want to go down there because I'm not dressed for it, and also because the deer are probably down there, and I don't want to overpressure the deer. So we'll work our way back up the hill from here. But there are no shortage of rocks, as you can see, with all kinds of different structures in them. Here's a nice open spot. Let's zoom up. Now we're working our way up the hill. It'll be interesting to see where we come out towards the house. I think I actually see, nope, that's just sky. All right, here's a very large old cedar tree base. As you can see, not much grass grows in this cedar. So while it provides cover for the deer, it generally does not provide enough food for them. And consequently, they will come up to the grassy fields like those around our house, which have been cleared intentionally to grow grass and attract deer. So we'll continue to work our way up the hill and see exactly where we come out. Deer tracks all over the place. I think I see the house now. There it is. So we aren't even around to the south side of the house, or just barely. And I'll pan over here. We're at one of the terraces, the terrace breaks. So it runs basically right through the field of view over towards the road. The road is directly ahead and then going down the hill. And obviously, there was a road created here. You can see it, there's a road created here. Pushed a little bit of gravel and rock. That might also be a burn pile. They may have driven their trash down here, the previous owners. And it depends on, of course, nature, but in some spots you'll see all cedar and no oak. Other spots just the opposite, and then even more spots a mix. It's just a matter of nature taking its course. Here is a shredded cedar trunk. There's no telling when this thing was cut down. It could have been decades ago. Needless to say, this wood looks horrible, but it's actually very, very resilient to the environment here, the weather and the critters and erosion and everything else. And another pan, let me zoom down a little bit here, because basically this is where the hill starts for real. We just walked up part of this, and that's the deer will be bedded down somewhere in there. Now we're getting over to an area where, for some strange reason, I don't know if it's the road or something else, but there are more deer bones, far more deer bones than there are on the back side of the property. I know we saw the one carcass there, but and it was recent. But this is milkweed. There are numerous varieties that grow in the hill country. This one is probably a young one. It could, in a couple of years, have a stem, a trunk rising 2 or 3 feet with flowers on top of it. This is Mexican Hat. As you can see, it's starting to fade because we're towards the end of the blooming season. But it's a very pretty flower, and there is no shortage of it on our property. All right, to give you an example of traffic, well, there's a car coming. It may or may not be coming by our property. Nope, I guess not. They must have turned, went to another subdivision. More deer tracks. And that was a dove taken off. And let's do a pan from here. So now we're on the east side of the property looking west back towards the house and up the hill. We're about, I don't know, a third of the way down the hill. We're at the bottom of the cleared out area. There's plenty of little cactus. I have to watch every step so I don't step in it. We had a hailstorm about a month and a half ago, and needless to say, there was some wind along with it, and we believe that's what took down this cedar tree. But we'll leave it because, believe it or not, you might have deer bed down underneath there. In fact, I think I see tracks. It's nice, some nice green grass, not too many rocks. Good place for a deer to lay down, get some rest. This is about a third of the way down the hill, looking west up towards the house, a carport, open field area where we have deer every single day. The deer will typically walk up through this patch of Mexican Hat, feed on the back side of the house, and then go to the left around the south side of the south end of the house, and then walk through the front yard grazing as they pass through. That's their typical daily path. So here's a typical patch of lichen on this oak tree. It's kind of a washed out, real light green. What you'll find on the rocks is usually white or brownish or orange lichen. I don't know if it's a different strain or just because of the nutrients from where it's living. Okay, let's finish the loop here. We'll go diagonally towards, up the hill towards the road. Looks like somebody's made a nice little pile of cedar wood for burning or furniture making. And here we are. You can see some of this rock pile where they basically dozed the larger rocks off to the side of the property. And here's a look at the house from the north side, looking kind of southwest to the house. The house is really only about 150 feet from the road, as you can see. Most of the property is to the west, the south, and the east. This is crushed river rock, and if you will wet it, and then after you spread it, wet it, and then drive over it, it'll pack almost perfectly flat. And the more you drive on it, the flatter it gets. And the more packed in it gets, this rock will never go anywhere. So this is the view from the RV window. Got a nice semi-shaded area, green area here. If you're sitting inside the RV, you'd see the deer walk through pretty much every day. They cross over the road and come onto our property or the opposite direction. Don't know if you can hear it, but a car just drove by on the road. That's about as much noise as we get. This is our handy little gorilla cart. It does well, except for the stickers. Front's got a little low pressure there on it, but there's a release on the front, and the bed of the cart flips, so you can haul stuff and dump it without having to tip the whole thing right over. But it's a very useful tool for a property like this. So I'll do a pan from the house back towards where we were earlier, looking up to the house, to give you an idea, a little more perspective of the property. Now the road's just beyond that hill. Here's our septic tank. The leach field is down this hill. So the back side of the house, you can see, they call it the bonus room, but we call it a mud room, and the back of the carport.